say some disturbing thoughts.
Disturbing thoughts? President Trump? Thank you.
Gross kissy.
Please edit that out of the recording. No, you can keep that in the recording. Fuck, I don't know. I don't actually know what time it is. Give people a few more minutes to arrive. All right. I think it's close to 11. I should also ask, since we're a pretty small group this morning, we can do this talk a couple of different ways. I've got some questions that I might pose to you during the talk rather than you just asking me questions at the end. Or I can just do we are getting feedback. I'm going to take this mic away. I think. Is that better? All right. So I don't know how participatory you want this to be, if at all. It's 11 shitty in the morning and you might just want to sit there and listen, but feel free to talk. I guess it kind of depends on the format. So, yeah, I guess it's enough after 11 probably that we can kick things off. Was that a thumbs up that we're good? Okay, cool. So anyway, hi, my name is Kat, and I'm a recovering political staffer. That was a joke. You can laugh at those. But no, it's true, and I've been clean for almost 6 years. I don't usually start with a bio, but I have a reason for doing that. Yeah, I didn't start out in InfoSec at all. It was kind of, well, in college I started to really tap into my passion for trying to solve fascinating problems, deconstructing things, taking time out of class to self-teach, questioning authority, staying up late, banging my head against my laptop. So that's a pretty typical hacker origin story, right? No, it's not. I was a gender and women's studies major. There'll be plenty of jokes about that. I've heard all of them and none of them are funny. That was a joke too. Sorry, I'm still kind of waking up, so I'm a little punchy. So a few years ago, I suggested to my friends, I started learning to code in my mid-20s, and eventually started going down rabbit holes of exploration and self-teaching, and so lo and behold, here I am going back to school for network security and working as a sock monkey. Yay, pun jobs. But it really wasn't until, I don't know, less than a couple of years ago that I started to realize that I could actually do this as a profession one day because of that mythical hacker creature, that, I don't know, cyber unicorn kid, whatever you want to call them. People who started as children, broke their parents' computers, and are good at their jobs because it's what they've done since they were in grade school. I constantly got the message that if you don't start as a kid, you've missed the boat. You're too late to be an InfoSec, or at least be any good at it. I've been asked in job interviews flat out whether I took apart my parents' computers in elementary school, and there were tangible face cracks when I told them that we didn't even have a computer when I was in elementary school. And I'm not that old, so plenty of other people did. I saw this desire to get people more security literate, yet I also saw this false dichotomy of technical versus non-technical people, as if technical were a binary, and as if curiosity were a binary, that people either had or didn't have and couldn't be fostered at all. I mean, when I was a kid, I made things, I read a lot, asked a lot of questions, just not with code. How could I? We didn't have a computer in the house. Pretty much the only stereotypical hacker thing I've done consistently since childhood is have social anxiety. And maybe a couple of black t-shirts. So when I did start picking up tech skills, I feared that this dominant narrative was true, that no matter how technical I am or how technical I become, I will never be technical enough because I will have never had a childhood or adolescence spent coding. It's pervasive. I've had so many nerves before each time I've given this talk because there's still a part of me that thinks that that's true. If you look up too old or too late on the Learn Programming subreddit, people 10 years younger than me are worried that they missed the boat. This is a very pervasive idea that you have to have started as a kid, but it's bullshit, and I am calling shenanigans. Passion for hacking is not measured at all by the age at which we got our first computer. Learning as a kid is one way to learn, and a lot of people in this community did learn as kids. That's great, but it's not the only way. And this needs to be more visible that there is more than one path into InfoSec. Kids with hacker parents, or at least tech-savvy parents, are more likely to get exposed to technology because public schools frankly do a really piss-poor job of teaching tech literacy. So that's an advantage that not everyone is going to have. So we all obviously got here somehow. There's a wealth of information on how to get into InfoSec. Wow. 4 minutes in, first Freudian slip of the morning. So, yeah, great resources on practice safe InfoSec, kids. Avoid backdoor. No, you don't have to avoid backdoors. So yeah, there's a lot of great information on there about how to get into InfoSec. I said it again. Once the interest is there, Johnny Christmas and Hacker Huntress have plenty of good talks on that. Lots of resources on how to build a home lab. I'm scheduled against a training on that very topic right now. But I wanted to know the step before that, how do we all get interested in this, and how do we use our past lives in our current InfoSec work? Because it's not like we're starting over as blank slates, and I think that gets missed a lot in the hiring process and in the learning InfoSec process, that we're not starting over just because we were doing something not in tech or not in InfoSec before. This is a piece that's completely missing from the dialogue of switching to InfoSec, and it's important to broadcast that for those who want to feel like they can break in and that they're not too late. I spent so many years feeling like I had to apologize for my resume, like it was a liability. But the years that predate our work transitions were not wasted time. Before I gave this talk the first time at B-Sides Las Vegas last summer, I ran a poll with just a few basic questions in different subject areas, hoping that it would lead to deeper questions in this talk. And as far as, I'm not a data scientist, it was a pretty small sample, but as far as how we got here via just about every path you could imagine. People were working in other IT fields, but also engineering, music production, education, so on. We had pretty much every major you can imagine. So the idea that everyone needs to be a CS major, So, yeah. I accidentally a lock, and I've been thinking for months how I can get that into a talk slide. So we break into security in unconventional ways. That actually happened. It's really easy to feel like we're at a disadvantage by being newer to InfoSec and already working adults, those of us who are later and we're doing stuff before. But there's so many transferable skills from working in other industries, and they can be a real advantage to our understanding and practice of security and hacking. A big one that is often undertaught in various tech fields, but really important, is communication, both written, verbal, and just the ability to interact with different groups and code switch. No matter where you're working, you'll probably be doing a lot of writing, and there's this perception that tech is very isolated, but even if you're not doing an entry-level help desk position, you're going to be spending a lot of time interacting with people, even if it's just higher-ups in your company, trying to convince them that you're right, because you probably are. Working under pressure is not security specific. That's a thing that can be built anywhere. I had to be one of the people answering the phones in a red state in a Democratic office during budget season, and that gives you new respect for, I don't know, booze. I don't know where I was going with that. So there's so many ways that you build skills and then move them forward. One that was sort of understated that in my experience as a political staffer, use a lot in InfoSec is the ability to stay current, which is a highly underrated skill in InfoSec, very important. You have to keep up, and you have to know how to keep up and seek out information and know what's more legit than others. Did that a lot. Does anyone have anything else? What were you doing before InfoSec, and how do you take that knowledge with you? Yeah.
I was in medical billing, and I just ended that career last January, and I'm in school right now actually for InfoSec. And one of my questions is, how do you get over that anxiety of
I don't know, because it seems like even people who have been here a while, as Jack Daniel put it, everyone either has imposter syndrome or should have imposter syndrome. I don't know how well people can hear. Should I be repeating questions? Yeah, for the video. Okay. She had mentioned having just left profession in medical billing and going back to school for InfoSec, and had asked, how do you get over the anxiety of feeling like you're not good enough? It's something that I see a lot of people struggle with, and I definitely struggle with a lot. But I think, I don't know, making peace with the fact that you're never going to know everything, and that's okay, and that the alternative would actually suck a lot if you do know everything, because then where would you have to go? So just, I try to remind myself of that, because there's always more to know. Yeah?
Can I add on that?
Yeah.
Something that's really helpful is understanding what imposter syndrome actually is. It means that you really care about what you're doing and that you want to be the best that you can possibly be. And for me, some things that have really helped me, first and foremost, I found a mentor. So I have somebody that I can lean on and I can talk to about things that I don't know how to ask questions in the workplace. I can go to my mentor. The other thing that I like to do is build a network of strong women in the field. Imposter syndrome is primarily felt by women and minorities. So if you have other women in the field that understand and can relate, they can then support you. So, suggestion.
Yeah, definitely. She had mentioned getting a mentor definitely helps, because it's a safe person to be able to ask questions to without fear of backlash, and building a strong network of women or other, depending on minority you might be, because imposter syndrome isn't just internal, it can be an external thing too if people are questioning you. I spent my first few cons with various people assuming I was just a +1. Was there another component that I missed repeating? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I like to, one thing I like to tell people about imposter syndrome is one of the reasons it exists is because you're comparing yourself to other people, right? You're looking at the person who dropped what they had today. Maybe it's a frame of reference problem, right? Compare yourself to your goals. Compare where you are now to your goals. That's a big thing for me.
Yeah, definitely. Compare yourself to your goals. Be the best you, not the best. Don't try to be the best version of somebody else. Your beginning could be somebody else's middle, and so on. So, yeah.
You know what Dunning-Kruger is? Look it up. If you have imposter syndrome, you should be really worried.
Yeah. Dunning-Kruger. Yeah. I saw another hand.
Yeah, so for me, I came from the nonprofit world. I was doing community organizing, fundraising, all kinds of fun nonprofit research projects. I found that there were two things that I was really good at. And that was ingesting a lot of information and then spitting it back out, helping to communicate in ways that helped to empower people to change direction of an organization, to take action, right? And those are two things that are expose me to something.
Cool. Before I go any further, I just realized we have an extra mic. We can make that the audience mic. Yeah, okay. And this is going to be recorded, just FYI. Yeah.
I have a question for you.
Oh, audience mic. That way I don't have to repeat everything and possibly miss parts of what you guys have said. We can pass the mic.
3, I'm good? Okay. So one of the questions I was going to ask you is about whether or not, so you talked about the narrative of sort of that in order to get into this, you have to have been doing it as a kid and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if part of the reason that exists is because there's no alternative narrative. So this is a discipline that's new, right? If you want to be an accountant, let's say, there's a path for that, okay? If you want to go into law, there's a path for that. It doesn't seem like we as an industry have figured out what that path is in yet. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are and on whether or not that issue relates to why we have these other narratives popping up.
Yeah, because I think right now that is the sort of assumed path, even though it's not the path that a lot of people take. There's not, it's like you said, it's not like getting licensed to be an accountant. There's not a clear educational path. There are a bunch of different ways to get here. But it seems like there has been this one that's dominant. And so I think we need to change that idea because there are so many different ways to get that. Whether there should be one singular path there is a topic for another talk. I know some people have thoughts about that.
So I'll comment on the path, and I think there's many different ways you can get into this industry and this profession, but when I look at someone I want to hire or someone that I want to interview as a colleague or peer that is trying to break into it, and one of the things I look for is that curiosity, that passion, that nature that wants to ask questions, not just stop at the first explanation. Why is this happening? How can I stop it? What can I do better? To continually improve and things like that. So that's one aspect. And then another thing is sort of like a sense of duty. So if somebody has that sense that I need to go and meet this criteria, not just check a box, not just do the bare minimum to get by. So if I do things right and have that sense of presence to continue to do the right thing even when nobody's looking.
So, just a fun story. One of my former students got his first job in InfoSec because of his first internship in InfoSec because he wrote this program called the Funculator in Ruby. And it was a little script that measured his programming time in Uptown Funks. It's that kind of passion, that kind of interest, doing something on your own that's fascinating, I think, is what a lot of people look for.
Yeah. So let's shift gears and talk about educational background a little bit. I like meme generators. Yeah, as it turns out, like I said before, our educational backgrounds are all over the map. And from what I could gather, the ones who actually feel most jaded about their formal education are the CS majors. All the liberal arts majors, all the psych majors seem pretty pleased with their degree choice. Sorry, we're getting feedback again. I apologize. So I wanted to explore how our educational background plays a role in our interest and our approach to security, because even if your formal education was in an unrelated field, it still definitely shaped who you are as a person and as a hacker and how you approach a problem. And this isn't CS specific. I don't have a CS degree. I know a lot of people who don't, although I'm working on a security degree, but my my major is in a social studies field, and I think a lot of the fields like that really foster the ability to think critically, and so that's an important piece for security. You have to sort of examine power structures, think about how to solve a problem, not know the answer and be okay with not knowing the answer, but know how to look for it, and that's a big one. Another piece is just being able to see how it fits together. If you're only studying one computer science, you don't necessarily see how the other pieces fit into it. Yeah, and by the way, this isn't a whole formal versus non-formal education fight thing. That's a whole other topic. There are plenty of people who have good talks on that. Ming Chow, Carolina Hardin. But I lost my train of thought. More coffee. Cheers. Fight. So yeah. So for formal education that we've had, how do you use that, even if it's not in a tech field, or if it is? Because CS gets a lot of hate, but there's definitely merit to it. How do you use that in your current security work? How does it translate?
So I have a bachelor's degree in automotive technology.
Cool.
And I've always been a car guy, and I've always really, been interested in how things work. So if there was an InfoSec degree of some kind when I went to college, I probably would have done that. But I didn't. And I've never really used my automotive technology degree. And I did kind of accidentally end up with an associate's degree in information systems. But I think the automotive technology degree, basically you're learning about these disparate systems that work together, because a car is just nothing but a bunch of complex systems that are connected. And that's what we're securing. It's a bunch of complex systems that are interconnected. The more this doesn't necessarily relate to formal education, but the more I learn about other fields, the more parallels I see in everything, in all fields. There's, you talk about design patterns in programming, and those come from design patterns in architecture and like actual, buildings. I think that, I guess what I'm trying to say is, I don't know about everybody else, but the more I learn about the world in general, the more parallels I see with our field. And also, it's interesting to look out for those. Like if you're coming from a different background, look at how what you know applies to information security, because you might be surprised.
Exactly. Yeah, and security is ubiquitous. We're securing, there's cars and toasters now, so it exists at every level, and you need to see how it all fits together. I was just mentioning to a coworker the other day, he's like, why do they need a whole degree for gender studies? I'm like, why do they need a whole degree? Why do they need a whole curriculum for security? Can't everyone just do CS? Same thing, sort of an interdisciplinary field. Where you see how all of these different systems fit together. It's a lens through which to view things rather than a subdiscipline in itself. So yeah, knowing that there are parallels out there definitely is good for making security more accessible to more people out there. Anyone else? Oh yeah.
As far as education, in being a person with a past life, as you've called it, how important is receiving certifications?
Oh, that's a rabbit hole. I don't have any certs. I'm an intern. People put different weights on them. I think I don't know. My 2 cents are they're a good HR. HR likes them, and in some cases, they're a demonstration of the ability to jump through hoops.
So I've hired a lot of people for security work, and I have never once paid attention to their security certifications, and also, or their education for that matter. I look at experience, I look their name up, and now granted, getting through HR is another story, right? Because HR, that's its own beast. But in all seriousness, when you make it to a hiring manager, if that hiring manager really cares about your certifications, probably a crappy hiring manager in all seriousness. You know, it's more about what have you done, what's out there. Like if I Google your name and I get nothing, I'm not going to talk to you. You know, with open source and everything going on these days, it is so easy to get out there and actually do stuff and experience and learn. That's where it's at, right? And let's face it, I know, excuse me, I know tons of people with certs that I would say we'll say, not the smartest people I know, right? And so I don't put tons of focus on that. But HR, absolutely. They love that stuff.
So to speak to that for a second too, I teach college, and my students that end up in the most interesting jobs get them because of the things they didn't do in class. Okay, it's the things they did outside of class on their own time. A story I like to tell is of a student who was working on IoT security for me. He finished his final paper. Okay, turned it in, continued to work on the project, and got RCE on a light bulb the night before graduation. Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, he was done. He got his A. Okay, but he kept working on it, and that's what got him into industry.
So I don't work in security. I'm going to use that as a disclaimer right now. I'm working my way into security. That's going to go to my second point. But with certifications and IT operations, I've interviewed people from intern up to senior engineer. And if you're getting a certification for the actual purpose of learning that thing to that level, okay, great. But if you're getting it to meet a requirement or thinking it's going to boost your resume up, it's not going to happen. And it may work against you. So I'll use for programmers, for example. You'll find places that have like Python certified security guy. If I'm no coder, but I know if I'm going to look for somebody with Python skills, I'd rather see what you've contributed on GitHub, which other repos, if you forked on repos on GitHub, I'd rather see that and you contributing, giving back to the community than a certificate. You got a certificate. There are people I know that have photographic memories much better than mine even, and that can literally look at the exam book. Or they're just really good at taking tests. There are people just really naturally good at taking tests. I wish I was one of those people. I'm not. I sucked at school. So, which brings me to my next point with, I'm not in it yet, but I'm working my way into it. The one lesson I learned is fail hard, fail fast, fail often.
And fail forward.
Right. If you're not making if you're making mistakes all the time, fine. As long as you're not the same one. So back to the whole imposter syndrome thing, right? Mm-hmm. The most practical example of how this is any weight room or gym, right? And I've seen women that are half my size do certain exercises much better than I can, lifting more weight because they have more strength in certain muscle areas. And I've seen guys bigger than me that I lift more stuff than. So if you're sitting next to somebody, if me and you're sitting next to each other in the gym doing a workout, you don't want to compare what your weight is. That's your weight you're carrying, and as long as you're pushing yourself to that limit. Which is why I say, which I go back to the whole the fail. If you want to build muscle, you don't build it unless your muscles are fatigued and failing. That's when your muscle growth starts developing. So keep failing, keep learning, and do it often.
You're here.
So I'm going to take a different perspective on certifications. I don't have, I actually have quite a few, but I see them opening doors more often, and I see them as being able to validate what I know in, my breadth of 20 years of experience. I'm able to, point to a certification and say, this related to it, and I can explain, the domains of CISP and why. And
Well, and
my
sometimes
experience
your
in it.
job just requires them, and that's
Yes.
another show as to whether or not that should be a thing. But
Exactly. Am I saying that you have to have a certification to exceed in this industry? No. I mean, I was doing it before I didn't get my CISP until 2007. I think it was the first. No, I actually got a CEH before that, but I don't like to admit that. But anyway,
we'll edit that out of the video too.
But but still, my point is certifications help open doors and help sort of do some validation, but it should not be the only thing somebody looks at. Yes, it is one of the things that recruiters hit on. Yes, it's one of the things that they, punch into a search engine in order to, come across your profile. Absolutely. But if it gives you put your foot in the door so you can have that conversation with the manager and then demonstrate your true wealth of knowledge.
Yeah, and I think formal education sometimes can be the same way. People hate on CS degrees, but sometimes that piece of paper does get you a foot in the door. It just depends where you work. So, yeah, certs can be the same way too. So let's talk about community for a minute. You guys, a couple of people mentioned mentorship and having a cohort of people around you. One thing that I found interesting when I polled people last summer was that very few people stated that they had a lot of interaction with other newbies to security when they were new to it, which is, I think, an area where we could do better outside of people going back to school and actually being in a classroom with other people. I mean, learning in groups is intimidating as an adult, but it has been shown to foster better retention of the subject matter and gives you other perspectives to bounce ideas off of and ask questions of. Hacking is often a really solitary pursuit, and one thing that helped move my skills forward a lot is, well, besides having more time to be able to devote to it, was having other people around, not feeling like I was literally the only person who didn't know stuff about things, and having other people who we could problem solve together. So I want to pose to you, how have events like CircleCityCons, local meetups, etc., helped make you a better hacker, and how can we do that? How can we make them more welcoming for other noobs? Yeah. And also, just for curiosity too, did you have much interaction with others who were new to InfoSec when you were new?
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. So I also am looking to possibly transition into security. My background is development, but I know enough about the industry to know that the parallels are significant. I just wanted to say very quickly, as far as community is concerned, I think we benefit from three kinds of interactions with people who are on roughly our same level, like you're saying, and you're collaboratively trying to arrive at a solution, with people who are at a higher level who are taking more of a mentorship role, and then with people who are at a lower level who we are able to reinforce, see things from a new angle and perspective. I think those three kinds of relationships, when they all come together, help us out a lot.
Definitely. I mean, when you're teaching somebody something, you learn it better yourself. And I've heard so many people say, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. But that's not all, well, smart being a relative spectrum, but sometimes you can be the one in the room teaching stuff, and then you retain that information better yourself. And so we need more of that.
For the ones that are doing the mentoring, and I've had mentors myself and actually mentor a couple people, I know sometimes mentoring the noobs can be very taxing, and it's not in the sense of they don't know. Like, you expect them to look for things at the same way you would. Like, it's not so much a technical thing. A lot of them don't have the mentality yet. So I would say, especially because of all of the help I've had over the years, from this guy to buddies I work with on the West Coast, is bear with them. I know it's frustrating, but you'll get one out of those 100 that will be tenacious enough to go further and be hungry enough to dig for stuff. And that feeling, it's worth it. It's worth it for you. So I'd say, like, if you're going to mentor, just keep it up. Don't burn yourselves out in the process, but definitely keep an open mind and taking on a noob every now and then.
I think there's a lot of rhetoric around mentorship in in security. And I feel like there's a lot of people take it as being this really formal relationship where you have one person mentoring one person. And I think to reduce taxation on the mentor and reduce, I don't know, probably anxiety on the mentee, I feel like it could be a lot more crowdsourced. And I feel like there could be a lot more to be gained from interacting with peers who are at the same level than just feeling like you have to get your information from one source, from somebody who is more experienced than you.
And definitely get information from more than one source, because
Always.
everybody has different ways of solving things. And so if I'm looking to get into, say, a blue team position, and I'm talking to somebody that does reverse engineering all the time, they'll be able to point me in the right direction to some degree, but there's stuff they're not going to be familiar with. But by finding more than one type of mentor, you'll learn a lot of different philosophies and styles, and eventually start making your own way in defining who you are.
Mm-hmm. We had one in the back.
So I've been on a blue team about 2.5 years now. And when I first got into the industry, there was a pool of us starting all at about the same time. We came in pretty green. We knew some automation. One guy was really good at Python, and the rest of us weren't, etc. We had a few senior analysts who've been in the field 20 years, and these guys are geniuses. They've been up and down the red side and blue side. So we had some really strong mentors coming into it. So then after about the first year, we were starting to branch out. We were all really good at gluing things together with Python on this side, and the other side where doing some kind of big data analytics on the side, etc. 2 years into it, we find ourselves now mentoring some of the junior analysts coming in the door, where we've all grown. We have benefited from working with each other and growing, at the same time still specializing and growing our individual skill sets. It's been really beneficial to have senior mentors, but now finding ourselves as the mentors, it's coming back full circle. It's pretty exciting to see another team grow like that, but having peers and working together, banging your head against the wall to solve problems, it's very beneficial at the peer-to-peer level.
Definitely. You can't always have, sometimes it's way better to have, I don't know, a 6 teaching a 5 than a 10 teaching a 5, because you remember what it was like to not know the thing that you know, and so you're closer to that problem-solving mentality.
So going back to one of your original points about attending cons and how that helps or what you get out of it,
Mm-hmm.
I think it really helps expose people to what other researchers are doing, so that you can find your own niche. Okay, we don't necessarily need more people dropping the latest vulns. We don't need people, doing things that other people are already doing. We need people doing interesting new things that they want to do. That's their own space to work in. And as a mentor, that's really what I try and help people do, is figure out what they're interested in. And that's a large part of mentorship, I think.
Mm. Yeah. All right. Pretty close to time. So, moving forward, where do we go? How can we make InfoSec as a career or a hobby or both more accessible to people at any stage of their career? And making it accessible doesn't mean lowering the bar. That's always a thing that gets said, and it does not have to mean that. I feel like sometimes we're a little bit too insular, like to have an us versus them mentality. I would say we all like to vent, but don't shame the users so much. You never know who is a person who wants to learn versus a person who is stubbornly not wanting to learn. I think to be effective problem solvers, InfoSec needs people with diverse perspectives and life experiences. This has been shown repeatedly in research that teams with different backgrounds are much better at problem solving because you don't get sucked into that groupthink mentality, which it's hard because we like to be around people who are like us, who share life experiences. And that's not always the best way to approach a problem. Having that discomfort actually breaks you out of that groupthink mentality and makes us way better problem solvers. So does anyone have any thoughts about making InfoSec more accessible to more? Yeah? Oh, you're passing the mic.
Sorry, I don't mean to talk, 2 times in a row super quick.
It's okay.
One thing my organization has done really well in the past is that we groom people from other divisions that show even a remote interest in liking security.
Oh yeah, mine does that too, development assignments.
Oh yeah, it's.
And then they can take that back to their team even if they don't end up going into security.
Yeah, we've one of our success stories. We had a guy. He was working on the help desk for, I guess, a couple of years. Before that, he had 10 or 11 years as in the automotive industry. He'd gotten tired of that, and he did the CompTIA trifecta, the A+, N+, Security+, all that kind of stuff. That got him past the HR filters, etc. But he brought that perspective to the team, and it's been really beneficial. He's killing it. But at the same time, we have to be willing to groom people and accept people from other walks of life, because they might not know picking out individual bytes in a packet or something, but that's a technical skill that can be groomed if they have the right mindset. I think as people that are now doing some of the hiring and making recommendations, we'd be willing to accept from other walks of life, but not necessarily the super hacker who's been doing it since he's 10.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've heard so many people say I can teach technical skills, I can't teach passion. So, and that, yeah.
I think that's a challenge I've run into myself is if I was going looking for a junior position and didn't care about pay as much, I could go, okay, I'll just be a security analyst, I'll leave my foot in the door, like a junior role, and work my way up. But I'm coming at the point where I've got enough regular IT experience that a junior would be almost impractical for me. I'm looking towards more mid-level to senior, and I've already resigned the fact that I'm going to take a pay cut. Like, I'm not worried about that. I don't have kids. I have the luxury of saying stuff like that and spending lots of money at conferences. So, but why else would I come to Indiana in the summertime? this guy. But the hard part where I'm at is like, well, am I going to, like, a lot of places I've tried working my way slowly, like working my way in security, like, I am a SharePoint guy, but I can also do this, and then I'll help you out with this. So volunteering helped out. Like, in fact, one of the companies I went to, after going to a DEF CON, me and the people who went did a talk on DEF CON because apparently 90% of the IT department never even heard of it. So it's like,
wow,
we need to change that. So we did a talk on DEF CON, and I'm not in I wasn't in the security team. They're like, you know what? We're gonna comp you for a DEF CON because you did that for us. It's really valuable. So I'd say a lot of volunteering, but like that's my only question is like getting into that mid-level spot or what exactly to look for and ask for. But that goes, I think I answered it myself earlier when I said fail fast and fail hard. So I went to an interview at a company a few months ago for a security engineer role, and it said DevOps security engineer. I had no idea. I barely know what DevOps meant, being in operations most of the time. Yeah, I push buttons, I monitor stuff, there's lots of check boxes, right? So I go into this interview, and it's like 3 hours long. And by the way, I had a cold that morning, and I was going to call in sick for it, but nobody ever found out about it. Nobody responded back. So I was like, okay, I'm sick as a dog, but nobody's responding back saying they can reschedule. So I don't want to be the guy that didn't show up for the interview. So I went anyway. So I'm in this interview for 3 hours long, talking to the entire security team, and getting question after question. And I'm pretty transparent. I'm like, I'm not going to come here and tell you I have all these skills I don't have. I tell you what I've worked in and all this stuff. And they ask me to do things like they would put things in context of security, and I've evaluated products here and there. And I can piece together security and different, like, security jobs I've had in every IT operations role. But after failing that interview, I learned I said, well, I kind of figured out what I needed to know. So now I'm studying stuff like web app pen testing. I'm writing a lot more code than I did before. Like I was in your class. That was awesome, by the way. Awesome. So I wrote my first Buffalo Overflow and some more Python tools. So I'm teaching myself more code, and I also got a really good pointer from Black Hat Python. Thank you very much. That was at DerbyCon last year. I finished that. I'm already powering through it now. And I have stuff on GitHub. So, you know, it's like as I fail often, and I don't care about I detach myself from the emotions of failing, and just go, okay, learn this, and play it, and just go again.
Right. You got to fail often, because you can't fail 100% of the time.
Right.
You have to really try hard to fail 100% of the time. So the more you fail, the more likely you'll be to succeed at least once.
And it's like an old game. I don't know if you guys played a lot of Mega Man as a kid. A lot of older games. It became this horrible obsession of mine. I hated Mega Man 2. And it was really hard. That's like a hard one. I played even more because of that. Seriously. And I kept making, and the entire thing of Mega Man, the premise of it's awesome because it's all trial and error. And most games are, but this one, it's it's painful. Mm-hmm. So I'd struggle, and go, okay, don't jump this way. And just repeat. I failed enough times, I'm like, oh, now I got this.
So I do have some thoughts on teaching passion. And what I've found is that the best way to do it is to give a student something that's totally doable for them, okay? And then make it one step harder.
That's what I do with lock picking. I give people the feel-good lock that's got one pin in it, so they get the satisfaction of picking a lock.
Yep. They get the satisfaction, and
then they're hooked.
Yep. That's exactly it. It's building up the ability for them to get sort of an internal reward from accomplishing a task. And once you get that skill developed, once you get that reward often enough, it doesn't stop. In fact, I suspect this is the root of what people call the coder's high, that you see discussed in a lot of media.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that hyper focus.
Yeah.
We just keep going. All right. So, yeah. Also, on the similar topic, shameless plug, my Proving Ground mentee, Chris DeWeese, is giving a talk in B-Sides, Las Vegas this summer about pushing security from the outside, so go listen to that one. We're at time, so I'm going to wrap this up, but I would just leave you with the thought that we're all here now, so let's not shy away from where we came from. We owe it to the people who are just coming in to broadcast the fact that there's so many different ways to get here. If you want to continue conversation, you can find me afterwards, but I will get off the stage. Thank you all for participating.